And a reminder as well that the Premier League obviously back this weekend. So Ger is going to be looking ahead to every game upcoming with end at 1:30 in the Paddy Power half hour. You can tune in across all our social channels or on OTB Sports Radio as well, as the lads put their neck on the line with some predictions for the weekend. So that's coming your way 1:30 today. Stay tuned to OTB's social channels for more details on that. Phil Egan, good morning to you.
How are you doing, lads? How are you getting on?
It's our weekly work of fiction here, where you tell us about the games that are must watch, might watch, won't watch, and obviously the must listen as well. Can I flip this one on its head, Phil, if you don't mind, this morning? As opposed to starting from the top down, I'm going to start from the bottom up, because in the won't watch, like, we normally sort of give you a bit of ribbon about the games that are in the won't watch, sort of, but I can't believe you've put in West Brom Burnley in the won't watch, given that you've Jimmy Dunn, who it turns out is he 22, was on with Nathan last night and is one of the most interesting, like, well ably communicated footballers I've ever heard speak, and a real future prospect for the Republic of Ireland, against another one who's just made his debut during the week in the shape of Dara O'Shea, and you put that in won't watch. I'm not having that, Phil.
There's a different layer to this now, Adrian. Pay-per-view. West Brom and Burnley is pay-per-view.
So how much are you willing to watch Dara O'Shea?
£15 sterling is what they're charging. So what does that work out? 16, 17 euro to watch West Brom and Burnley. Would West Brom and Burnley fans even pay that much to watch them?
It is a fair point. That's the only reason you're putting it in won't watch?
Well, I know, like, obviously, given the fact that we're being encouraged to stay in, a lot of these games end up turning into the must watch for me. But there's certain ones that, you know, you can live without. And West Brom Burnley, it's a Monday 5:30, but then again, I'll be at home on Monday at 5:30. So there's a good chance I will probably end up watching it.
You're not exactly talking about Ronaldo and Messi here, Adrian. And, like, with all due respect to our hopeful next generation of Irish players, they're assured centre backs.
We don't have a raft of Irish players who are playing in the Premier League.
We don't. They're assured defenders. You know, like it's like I get the patriotic reasoning for it, but if they have a good game, if they both have a good game, the game is likely to be a drab affair.
Yeah.
Look, fair enough. It would be definitely the reason that I would watch a lot of Premier League games. My own personal reasoning as to why, in my own list that does not exist of games that are in the might watch, that might go into the must watch category at times, where it's like, I want to see how Matt Doherty gets on, and so I'll watch Tottenham play some team that they're going to roll over, or whatever it might be. That's definitely, or I like, who wants to watch Aston Villa? I mean, apart from when they're sort of thumping team 7-2, obviously, outside of seeing how Conor Horan gets on. Although not at the minute, obviously, given that he's been squeezed out. Listen, we're going back up to the top of the list.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that everybody's going to be watching it tomorrow afternoon, Phil.
Yeah, 12:30, Merseyside derby, Everton, Liverpool. Last 3 games at Goodison Park in the Premier League have ended 0-0. There is absolutely no way this game is going to end 0-0. Absolutely not. Adrian's playing a goal for Liverpool. That's encouragement for Everton. Also, Everton really probably fancy their chances of beating Liverpool. The fact that they've started the season with 4 wins from 4, Liverpool are coming off the back of the 7-2 humiliation to Aston Villa. Now, in the build-up to the game, Jurgen Klopp has done an interview where he said, you know what, I actually liked that it was 7-2 rather than 3-2, because he had to actually do a lot more analysis. Now, I mentioned Adrian, he gets a lot of stick off Liverpool fans, but even when Alisson was in goal towards the end of last season and for the games this season, Liverpool are conceding goals. And I wonder what Klopp is going to do in terms of his team selection. They've kept 1 clean sheet in the league this season. Fabinho played that day in central defence. Does he turn to Fabinho and take Joe Gomez out? Joe Gomez had an absolute horrific game at Villa Park. And maybe Joe Matip, obviously trained this week, he could be an option, but he might
Same again, Phil. Fabinho at centre-back. Then you get Thiago and Henderson in the team. Everyone's happy. Yeah,
I know Naby Keita, it looked like he was going to be ruled out, but that second test came back negative. So he's an option there for them as well. Obviously, Sadio Mane is there. I wonder as well, Roberto Firmino was in action for Brazil. They obviously get back a bit later. Would Klopp maybe be tempted to play Mane more centrally and play Jota on the left, who scored a couple of goals for Portugal during the week? One of them was really impressive, cut in from the left and just smashed the ball into the bottom corner. So Liverpool have Mane back, which would be key, and it's going to be interesting that side of the pitch, Mane and Robertson up against what we presume will be Seamus Coleman and James Rodriguez. Well, obviously James tends to drift in, so it could be a tough afternoon for Seamus Coleman, test out that hamstring that obviously forced him to miss the Ireland games.
Is there not a chance, Phil, that Liverpool smash Everton tomorrow?
There is a chance, but I don't think so, because I think what could end up happening, because it's the half-12 game, it's the first game back after the international break, it could be a bit cagey at the start. Now, Everton might think differently, but they might think, let's go at Liverpool from the off. But the danger is if you do go at Liverpool from the off, that they could pick you apart. Now, Aston Villa would say, no, if you go at them from the start, you can absolutely smash them. But surely if Klopp is looking at that Villa game and he's analysing with his coaching staff, he has to realise if Adrian's in goal, fair enough, but you can't play as high a line, because Adrian doesn't come off his line the way Alisson does. And you obviously just need to say to your defence, just drop back a little bit, protect your goalkeeper, because he's just not on the same level as Alisson. Not many goalkeepers are, if any, in the world at the moment. There's always going to be a drop-off. And, you know, here we are talking about Adrian, but Jordan Pickford isn't exactly in top form either. And almost coincides with that goal that he conceded in the Merseyside derby at Anfield a couple of years ago for the Origi winner, that everything seems to have kind of gone off boil for Pickford. And pretty much since then he's kind of hanging on to his England position, and obviously they beat Brighton before the international break, but he gave away a really bad goal in that game as well. So I just think for that reason, and the fact that just the way the season has gone, there's been so many goals, there's no way this is ending 0-0.
The best thing that can happen, by the way, with this game at the weekend is that if Everton pull off another 7-2, which, like, look at, I know when you're saying that Liverpool are going to go out and thump Everton, I mean, the opposite could be equally true. But the best thing that can happen is that, and I'm sorry, Phil, but the best thing that can happen would be that Everton thump Liverpool 7-2 and Klopp sees sense and gets Adrian out of there. They've, behind the scenes, been talking very positively about Caoimhin Kelleher's long-term prospects at the club. Obviously, Alisson's a bit of a roadblock to that, no matter what happens. But surely at that point, and I mean, I'm not saying that Ireland have a bit of a goalkeeping crisis. It was one blip, but we do need somebody else to come in there and put their hand up as firmly going to be the long-term future from an Irish point of view. So he'd be in, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I just don't really see it working that way for Kelleher at Liverpool. They've just signed a 17-year-old goalkeeper from Brazil, and Alisson and his brother had a key role in that. So I think Kelleher...
But he's probably got another, 6-7 years before he's ready for first-team football. Yeah,
but, you know, he has to play. Like those... We don't know. He obviously has to fill out as well in terms of his physique. He's very comfortable with the ball at his feet, but there has been games he's played. Obviously, he played the League Cup game against Aston Villa last season, conceded 5, played the League Cup game. Now, that was a very young Liverpool team. It was a much-changed Liverpool team when he played in the League Cup game against Arsenal last season. I know he ended up being the penalty hero, but he conceded 5 in that as well. So he's played cup games as well, and he's... it's a huge step up. Like, so there's no way Klopp could turn around. As bad as Adrian's been, his confidence looks fairly low at the moment. It would be madness to throw Kelleher into a Merseyside derby.
Manchester City Arsenal is on your must-watch list as well, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be party time for Arsenal.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, this is a great signing for Arsenal. Obviously, things are moving along nicely for Arteta. Now, Arsene Wenger's been talking in glowing terms about Arteta this week. Obviously, Arsene Wenger seems to be everywhere at the moment promoting something, but he's been very impressed with Arteta. Arteta obviously has one of the key things was to get Aubameyang tied down, so that's done. Obviously, Gabriel, the defenders, come in, and now Partey gives them a bit of steel in midfield. And you know, a guy that plays for Atletico Madrid is going to be well able to play with discipline, and Arsenal have shown in these big away games against the bigger teams that they can play with discipline. Obviously, they beat City in the FA Cup, so Arsenal will fancy their chances of getting a result here, and City are just showing signs of what we saw last season, where they create plenty of chances but they're just not putting them away and they're not winning the games. So it's obviously, you know, the added kind of layer to it is that it's Guardiola against Arteta, who was part of his coaching staff. So the master against the disciple, but the disciple came out on top last time. So it's it's early days obviously in the league, and we tend to overreact with each result. That if you lose, that it's almost that could be your title chances over. But I think what we've seen already this season is it's not going to be a 95, 96 points job for whoever wins the league. So defeats are going to happen, draws are going to happen. I just think this season is just going to be a very, very hard one to predict, and just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, the temptation there is to suggest that what I suggested about the Everton-Liverpool game could also happen in that game, where Manchester City could smash Arsenal. But I think both of those assertions are kind of living in 2018, 2019 a little bit too much, and it doesn't actually reflect where I think both of those teams are at. I think if City get beaten again tomorrow, that opens things up a fair bit if we're talking about who's going to finish second, at least, in this year's Premier League. And one of the teams who might have had designs on that at the start of the season was Manchester United. They're away to Newcastle. This is one of your must-watch games.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, Phil, did they just get the loss out of their system, that loss out of their system so early in the season, as in this terrible hammering, that they're looking around and they're looking at that Liverpool fixture a little bit later on that night and thinking to themselves, right, this is going to happen to a lot of teams this year, and the impact of that terrible defeat might not actually be felt too keenly.
Yeah, well, it was a mental day if you think about it. The fact that who predicted that West Ham were going to win 3-0 away to Leicester, and then obviously what happened at Old Trafford and Villa Park. So we've seen so many goals. People will say, is it down to the fact that there's no fans at the games? Is there a drop off in intensity for that reason? And players aren't fully fit yet. So there's a few different factors to think about with these results. But in terms of United, you don't know. See, what's going to end up happening is obviously they've all been away for 2 weeks on international duty. You've mentioned the Everton-Liverpool game. If Liverpool were to lose, then not much is made of the international break. Whereas if Liverpool win, then they say, they really needed that international break. And the same goes for Manchester United. But you look at what they're facing. They're facing a Newcastle team who, on their day, they can be quite hard to beat. Brighton beat them 3-0 at St James's earlier in the season, and maybe that's the kind of blueprint United should be looking at, where they can sit in and just pick Newcastle off in the break. Rashford, you would imagine, is going to start down the centre because Martial is suspended. You'd like to see Donny van de Beek come in. I know Pogba showed glimpses playing for France during the week, what he can do, but he just hasn't done it for Manchester United. And Telles is available, so do they put him straight in? What do they do with Harry Maguire? The guy looks so short on confidence that Solskjaer has a serious choice to make here. It's not as if Harry Maguire is going to knock on the door and say, Gaffer, I'm in a bad place at the moment, you got to leave me out. It's up to Solskjaer to take the reins there and say, Harry, it's not working for you, but look at the options. Do you put Lindelof back in? Lindelof is the player that United supporters have criticised. He wasn't there for the 6-1. So do you put Maguire and Baye back in? Do you say Maguire, you bring him out and then you put Lindelof and Baye? That's not very solid back four. So there's a lot to worry about for Solskjaer. And then on the back of that, you've got a Champions League game against PSG in Paris to come on Tuesday. So the pressure is on, and maybe they needed a little bit of time to get the result out of their system, and they went off and played their international games. But this is another one that is pay-per-view in the UK, but if you've got Premier Sports actually in Ireland, you don't have to pay for it. So I just think that this pay-per-view for Premier League games is pretty sickening, to be honest.
Well, you pay a fiver maybe.
You probably would, but 15, that's...
Yeah, it's deep, all right.
Like I'm looking at one of the greatest fights that we could see in the next few years, Lomachenko and Lopez. I can watch that for free this weekend on Air Sport, which usually you pay maybe 15, 20 euro to watch boxing, but I'm getting to watch that for free, yet you want me to pay for West Brom and Burnley.
You can listen to Spurs against West Ham on Off the Ball tomorrow, Sunday at 4:30. Nathan and Brian Kerr on duty for that one. Gareth Bale, picture of him and Matt Doherty having a bit of a sort of almost in a headlock at training in one of the English papers this morning. So we've that in your must-watch, and you've Leicester Villa in there as well.
Yeah, well, Leicester Villa, I mean, two teams up towards the top of the table. We want to see our Villa going to be able to reproduce
it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Ollie Watkins.
Is Howran out of that now, Phil? Is that him Is that just life now? He gets out of it and they go ahead and win 7-2 and.
Well, I think Barkley just gives you more energy in midfield, but look, it's going to be a long season, and so there's definitely plenty of games for Conor Hourihane there. But yeah, that was my feeling when they signed Barkley. I thought that's probably not good news for Conor Hourihane. We know how good Conor Hourihane's been for Villa and what he gives, but Barkley just gives you a different type of player in midfield, just that high energy, and that's what won against Liverpool, that high energy. And Jack Grealish is now getting more space, and this is a fixture where you get to see Grealish up against James Maddison, and that was the one that was talked about last season. Who would you rather? But for me, it's always been Jack Grealish. I just think he's head and shoulders above Maddison. I think watching the England game during the week, I just couldn't get my head around the fact that they needed a goal and he was sitting on the bench. On the same day Ireland couldn't score goals, it was a tough one to take. But yeah, the more space Grealish gets, if you've got more dangerous players like the likes of Watkins and Barkley, if Grealish gets more time on the ball, that's only a good thing for Villa. But yeah, it's been a great start to the season for them, given the fact that they survived on the final day. But they have signed well. They've got a really good goalkeeper. I think Matty Cash is a decent upgrade at right back as well. So Leicester, I actually thought Leicester would struggle at the start of the season. They surprised me with that result at City. But let's see what happens now on Sunday with that game. That's actually another pay-per-view. But I actually wouldn't have no problem paying for that one ahead of, say, the likes of West Brom and Burnley.
Fair enough. Wolves Leeds sneaks in there as well, I presume.
Yeah, Monday night as well. Just I've said it before. Leeds are just going to be must-watch for every game. I just think the way they play. If you're not watching a Leeds game, you're missing out. We've waited so long to see them in the Premier League, and it's just great that this version of Leeds is the one that's come back, not one that might have scraped up through the playoffs a few seasons ago without Bielsa, which would have just been on a hiding to nothing to go back down. This looks like a Leeds team that is equipped to do very well in the Premier League, and it could be the start of something very special. 6
games in your must-watch, 2 games in your might-watch. I mean, we can get a bit of an insight into the life of Phil Egan right here.
Yeah.
One of the might-watch is another one of the box office games, Chelsea-Southampton on Saturday, and then Palace-Brighton on Sunday too, which is live and off the ball as well. That's Steve on duty for that one at 2 o'clock on Sunday. And then you're not going to be watching, you say, Sheffield United against Fulham, and as you've already stated, West Brom against Burnley, both box office games. It's probably only really that reason. Otherwise, you'd be all over it.
It's probably the only time you'll hear the words box office around those fixtures when they are actually pay-per-view. But
we're gonna see Phil Egan having to remortgage his house as a result of paying for all these box office games.
At the moment, I'm getting work done on it, so I'm sitting in a building site basically with things in the way. But as long as the TV is there, I'm okay.
You'll be all right. Get the hammer out and get stuck in yourself.
That's it. In between, like take out a few things during half time of certain games, and obviously with the games on off the ball on Sunday as well. That's when I can get things done as well.
Brilliant, Phil. Good man. Enjoy the games over the weekend.
Cheers, lads.